Welcome to the Love of the Star podcast. I am Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. That is your radio flagship home of the Dallas Cowboys, joined as always by former Super Bowl winning NFL scout Brian Broaddus. He is now the co-host of the G-Bag Nation, 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. And he is also the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys radio network. And he absolutely loves how much I use my hands when I'm talking and saying things. Brian, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Bobby. And again, that is Bobby Belt. He said all those good things, but he didn't say enough good things about himself. He is he is on 105.3 The Fan, Sean and RJ and Bobby, 5:30 to 10, Monday through Friday. He is, as mentioned, a Cowboy insider. He is also one of the better commentators we have on the draft show. And he is also a co-host of this award-winning program, which you folks have so graciously embraced. And we thank every one of you for it. And we especially thank our folks at Boomer Jacks for letting us come along with the ride.
Oh, absolutely. And we had a great time out at Boomer Jacks on Tuesday night. It was an awful game for the Stars, but it was nice to hang out there, get to see some folks, shake some hands, hug some babies, all of that, and take some photos. So it was really great to see you guys, and we'll do one of those again in the near future. All right, Brian, OTAs are here. We were allowed to see the lone practice for the week that we can see as media for the Cowboys out at the Star in Frisco. A few different things that went on. We'll take these first two segments really before the mailbag and just kind of go over some of our thoughts, some of the things that went on out there. What really grabbed your attention? Was there one main thing that you looked at and said, that was the most notable thing that you saw out there on Thursday?
Yeah, I was really, I was kind of expecting to maybe see Tyler Smith playing left guard. I know for the hour that I was out there before I had to leave for my show, I did not see him play left guard. He played left tackle. When you had Matt Farniak was the starter at left guard. So Tyron Smith was the starter at right tackle out there, but he was not participating in anything. Again, I'm just looking for where guys are lining up. And that's kind of the lineup I saw. I was part of, like you were, Bobby, myself and Zach Wolchuk, who worked with us on the draft show, and then also at 105.3 The Fan. He and I split up. He went on one end of the field. I went to the other. And I ended up working with the young guy, like the young guy side of the field down there with Mozzie Smith, Junior Fahoko, those guys, the rookie guys. On his end of the field, though, was interesting, was the guys like Luke Schoonmaker up on that side of the field. If you're talking
rookie
about a veteran,
the lone rookie.
Yeah, if you're talking about if you're talking about a guy that was the lone rookie guy, it was Schoonmaker, and everybody else was down on my end of the field. But I'll tell you what I was super impressed by, Bobby. I do think there is this, when you watch a guy like Deuce Vaughn, and really in these OTAs mini camps, you're looking for where they're lining up, and you're looking for athletic ability, and you're looking for those things of like, oh, look at this, look how quick this guy is. Deuce Vaughn has legitimate quickness to his game. He is short. That's clear when you see him live. But when you watch him, there were drills that they were running where defenders were trying to cut him off before he got around the corner. They weren't able to do that the couple of different times that I watched. I know you'll probably talk about Deuce Vaughn and a pass he caught. You got to stay behind and watch a little bit more than me, but I was impressed. I'm glad I got to see where the offensive line lined up. I'm glad I got to see Mozzie Smith. I'm glad I got to see Junior Fahoko on my end, and I'm glad I got to see Deuce Vaughn. How about that?
Yeah, I think that's all, really positive stuff. Like we mentioned, Schoonmaker being over with the veteran group was really interesting to me because that's the only rookie over there, and it is not an issue of they didn't have tight ends available. They had all their veteran tight end group over there, and Schoonmaker was still over there practicing. So the fact that he was with them and getting in important reps with Dak Prescott, I think was very relevant. Some of the offensive line combinations, I think, stood out. You had Matt Farniak, who started at left guard, but he also played right guard. He took snaps at center. You had Josh Ball playing both right guard and right tackle. Matt Waletzko played some right tackle. Chuma Edoga, even though we've heard about some flexibility with him, all we saw him do was left guard. And as you mentioned, the only thing we saw Tyler Smith do was left tackle. There was no other work for him other than left tackle while we were out there. So some interesting offensive line combinations, to be sure. I really, really wish Terrence Steele would have been healthy and available to practice, because I would have been incredibly interested to see who was taking snaps where. But overall, that was, kind of my biggest takeaway was what was going on with the offensive line. No Zach Martin. He was there for practice. He had not come out until after you left, Brian. He did show up in street clothes, but he was physically at the building, just not practicing. But I do think that the Schoonmaker thing was of note. Schoonmaker also, at one point, it looked like he may have tweaked something. He was talking to Jim Maurer for a little bit. He was kind of stretching some stuff, had taken off a few reps at one point, did come back in. I saw him catch a couple passes. So that was encouraging to see that he had come back, but it looked like he was dealing with something. And that's something that you would hate to see. You would hate to see him get sidelined with any sort of a soft tissue thing, Brian, because we saw last year how much that put Jalen Tolbert behind.
Yeah, that was something that clearly, we remember Washington, the receiver, Tolbert, they were kind of working together over off the side. And, that was as much as I hate to say it, Bobby, that put Jalen Tolbert on the absolute wrong foot going forward. He just never, ever was able to recover. I don't know if it affected the way that he, he got into camp. I'm sure he was healthy. He was trying to practice, but those were reps that he missed. Those were opportunities to line up. And then now you're at training camp. You're having to go out there. You're having to learn. You're having to perform. He just didn't do a very good job of it. And if I can mention one other thing, Bobby, you could kind of maybe expand on it a little more, was Kelvin Joseph playing free safety. And, I saw some reports from the Michael Gelkins and the Todd Archers and the John Machotas of him actually making plays from a free safety spot. So here I am, a transition from Tolbert to Joseph, but man, that might be a good sign that these coaches have figured out Kelvin Joseph as a free safety, might be the best avenue for him to travel.
Yeah, so I didn't see. I think I saw a couple reps where he was lined up in a pseudo safety, pseudo corner role. Most of the reps he took at practice were apparently nickel, were nickel snaps. But he was working with the safety group in all the drills, which I thought was interesting. Somebody made mention to me later. Nobody at the team, just another person on the beat had made mention to me later. They said, Jordan Lewis a lot of times takes snaps with the safety group too, and he's a nickel guy. And so it could just be an issue of they're basically doing some cross training of sorts, or just having him divide up into.
Is it dime stuff? Is it the 6 defensive backs, or is it?
No, did you notice it? There was a point where the group working out was all the corner. Joseph was the only corner in a group with all the safeties doing their normal drills.
Okay. I see.
So he was doing Joe Witt drills. Al Harris's group with the corners over there, Kelvin Joseph was not in there.
Yeah.
Now, I thought that was interesting. I haven't noticed that before, that Jordan Lewis works with the safeties a lot, but I did have somebody tell me later that they think Jordan Lewis does that pretty frequently. So it could just be a sign of the type of work they get the nickel guys into. It's something for us to run down. But look, I think regardless, Kelvin Joseph is doing different things. Kelvin Joseph had been a boundary corner here. This was not a nickel, safety, whatever you want to say it is. They're clearly trying out some different things with him. And, Michael Gelkin at the Dallas Morning News had pointed something out that I think was a rather astute observation, which was you already have CJ Goodwin here. You've got your defensive back that doesn't really play defensive back. He's just kind of a special teams player.
Right.
You can't really afford to have two of those guys sitting on your roster taking up room in your DB room.
It's a good point.
Joseph has to get it together. They've got to find a role for him, because if they can't find one on defense, he's going to be out on the street.
Yeah. The one thing about him is with Kelvin Joseph, the fact that he is the flyer, the gunner, whatever you want to talk about, there's a guy that could play well in space. There's a couple of times where he had penalties. Remember where he bumped into, returners and it missed the fair catch and maybe not aware and all that. The only thing that maybe could keep Kelvin Joseph from being a decent safety is if he doesn't have the ability to see, if he doesn't have the ability to understand. But you kind of, the penalties he got on those returns, that's a concern. But the fact that he's willing to tackle the way he plays in space, maybe that's the right route. That maybe Dan Quinn and them, at least through one practice, and again, one OTA practice, that we saw, the fact that they've already shifted him over to safety, I think is maybe that's the right way to go with the guy that's got a little physicality to his game.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just a little physicality. I think the best trait Kelvin Joseph has shown as a pro, even when he's playing defense, when he's playing corner, is he's not afraid to get physical. He's not afraid to tackle. I think the final game of the 2021 season against Philly, I think he had 11 tackles that game at the corner spot. So he's very physical, very willing to get in there and make a play. You just want the coverage to be better. You want him to be more disciplined. And honestly, what you want is him to grow up and be a pro. The Cowboys have had
the maturity factor. That's the thing that might get Sam Williams too. When everybody's talking about the level of what Sam Williams, the edge, what he could be, it's maturity. Kelvin Joseph, Sam Williams, those are the maturity questions there.
Absolutely. I think that's a big part of it. And, it's interesting to see that yesterday with Jordan Lewis out, Trayvon Diggs out, Kelvin Joseph, they're having to try out these different things with him, have him do different things and they had Nashawn Wright on the boundary, somebody who struggled himself at times.
Yeah. Hey, Bobby, can I run through something real quick here? And it just maybe we were talking about Jordan Lewis, and it's funny because our friends at Blogging the Boys came out with a list of 3 veteran Cowboy players that could be traded, or would be trade assets or chips. And Jordan Lewis is on that list. Dorrance Armstrong, Jordan Lewis, and Dante Fowler. And I asked my gang of 7 about the rankings of where they would put those guys as far as who would you want on your team. Can I just run through a couple of those and just kind of let you, because this one of my guys on gang of 7, he ranked him this way as far as trade chips is how teams would come after him. And it just maybe give you a little bit of idea, but I don't think they're going to trade any of these guys. I'm just telling you what these teams thought.
Sure.
Dorrance Armstrong was number 1 for a team. Jordan Lewis was 2nd, and Dante Fowler was 3rd. And that was one of the teams that I'm dealing with. The second one was, see if I could get that. Fowler, one of my guys said Fowler, he wouldn't think that Fowler would have much value. Because he was just available. He says Jordan Lewis coming off the injury. He says Armstrong's the most affordable. So there again, there's a little bit of a different mix from a team. And then the third team that I said, Fowler, Lewis, Armstrong is what they had there. So you can kind of get a little bit of an idea about where if Jordan Lewis wasn't injured, I think that, he might very well be your starter. Bland is going to give him everything that he has there. Bland is going to.
I think that's Bland's job to lose. I think that's Bland's job to lose.
You think so too? You think it's Bland? So all of a sudden now, if you're talking about Jordan Lewis and trade possibilities, he's either ranked 2nd or 3rd, off that list that Blogging the Boys had. That they were talking about possible trade assets or chips.
You are listening to the Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, some more takeaways from OTAs here as we look at things. One of the things I saw yesterday that kind of stood out to me was the fact that, a big discussion point last season and mentioned a lot yesterday in media availability is communication between your back and your guys on offense.
Hey, that's a great get, by the way. I know you were in the locker room covering for 105.3 The Fan. Those Dak Prescott clips, I think, were very, very telling. I know the one you're about to talk about.
Yeah, and he had talked about how, look, the communication's got to be on point. He explained away gave context to some of the interceptions about, guy sees this, I see this is what happens. Sounded a little, to me anyway, I don't know about you, Brian, I guess it's up for everybody's interpretation, sounded a little frustrated with maybe how Mike McCarthy's talked about it publicly this offseason. when he was asked a question about how McCarthy had addressed it, then Dak said, I think he remembered that wrong or something to that effect. Said that wasn't totally the way.
Not exactly how it was said. Yeah.
And so it was a little interesting there, but communication is a big emphasis. Brian, I noticed him talking a lot yesterday to two players consistently throughout the practice, and that was Brandon Cooks and Jake Ferguson, his second-year tight end from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
All in the name of, it seemed like, open communication.
Yeah, and let's be really honest about. I think Dak Prescott is fed up about having to answer questions and him be the guy that falls on the sword for the interceptions. After every game, even when they were winning, it came down to somebody would ask a question about an interception, and what would Dak do? I got to be better. Got to be better. He would take responsibility for what was going on. I think Dak Prescott's to the point now where he's like, listen, you MFers can all blame me for these interceptions. And let's be honest too, he's got, negotiations are coming up to, for, contract for cap numbers and all that stuff. He's taking a lot of heat for the interceptions. And I think rightfully so. He's talking about communication. He's talking about being on the same page. He's saying, listen, you guys out there, the guys and the gals in the media, and all you fans, guys and gals out there, you can continue to blame me for these things, but there's more to it than that. And I think he put some others on notice that, and I don't think he appreciated, and this is my observation of it, Bobby, and this is not anything I talked to Dak or anybody in his camp. I don't think he was too happy about Mike McCarthy putting their business out there, what they did about looking through all his interceptions. Yeah. I don't think Dak's like, listen, are you always going to talk about conversations that you and I have here? Is that something, being on the same page? I think that's big, but I don't, and guys and gals, I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. I'm really not. I'm just saying Dak looks pissed that his conversation with McCarthy over what they evaluated got out. And the second thing is he is not going to stand up there and say, I have to be better. I have to be better. I have to be better. When in actuality, yes, he has to be better, but the rest of these guys better be better along with me. That's what I think. I think you're going to hear a lot from Dak Prescott this year, and maybe into OTAs, what we have left the mini camps, and then into the training camp, about communication and about being on the same page. He is not going to stand up there and take the blame for this anymore.
I think, look, it's a very complex problem. I mean, not the interceptions. The interceptions are the interceptions. But
those are a problem. The interceptions are a problem, especially especially before half, when they have a chance to get points and they don't get points.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's something that was an issue last year, and there are a lot of factors that go into it. We've discussed that before. We know those sort of things, but I'll say this. I think that it probably won't be at the end of this year. Maybe it'll be at the end of Mike McCarthy's time in Dallas, or the end of Dak Prescott's time in Dallas, or maybe we'll get 5 years down the road and this will be a different roster composition than what we currently look at somewhere down the road, Brian. I think we're gonna look back and we're gonna hear stories about, hey, that interception issue that was going on in 2022. Well, here's this detail, and this detail that you didn't know, and that were causing issues, and that they didn't feel comfortable addressing because of locker room culture, and that there were just things that they said, it's not beneficial for us to just give you the explanation as to why. It probably harms our locker culture more right now to have to deal with that. But there are reasons why, and you guys can stop looking for them. We understand what's happening here. Yeah. And so I think that's just a difficult position to be in, and it's a difficult position to explain away to a fan base and a media that's looking for answers. But I bet, in the next couple of years, we'll look back, we'll get the full picture of it, and it'll all click and make sense and go, okay, that year makes sense now. We now see this and this and this that we didn't know at the time that gives us the clarity. And I think that's probably where Dak Prescott's frustration came from yesterday, was in that, look, I've got these answers and I'm really frustrated that we keep asking these questions and I'm in a position where I can't explain it to you. And so you guys need to just take the answer of communication is going to be better and we'll work on it. But other than that, I can't just sit here and blow this issue up any more than it already is.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. I just, man, he's got a lot on his plate. He really, really does. And, he's been the stand-up guy. He has been the stand-up guy over there. And with things looming on the horizon with his contract, all the situations, I just kind of feel like, yeah, I can't tell you everything. Like he's like you said, he can't tell you everything, but I think that if you pulled him aside and you said, hey, tell me about the conversation that you had with McCarthy as you guys went through all those interceptions. It would be fascinating to hear what McCarthy and Schottenheimer deemed as his responsibility as opposed to somebody else's responsibility, And I would love to have that conversation. Like, okay, remember this game, remember this game, but it's something that's alarming, Bobby. He missed 5 football games.
Yeah.
And he's still the number of interceptions. But you know what? I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't think it's going to change. And I mean that in a way of, I'm not trying to say that Dak's a bum quarterback. I'm just saying the way he plays, his aggressive nature, his willingness to make throws and put the ball in spots where people might not be willing to throw it. He's not the most accurate quarterback. We've seen that at times, but where he is, he's fearless in the way he wants to throw the ball. And the way teams play him, yeah, he could have double-digit interceptions again. But I just don't think that's going to change. And I'm not saying you have to accept Dak for who he is, but I'll be interested to see what differences they try and make with him. But I don't know how much, because his willingness to try and make plays, it's the one thing that helps him, and it's the one thing that gets him in trouble. But like I said, he's not going to stand up there and take the blame for all this stuff anymore. And gosh, I wish I was that fly on the wall with him, McCarthy, and Schottenheimer when they were going through all those interceptions.
It'll be a fascinating thing for us to watch play out over the next several months. And specifically, it'll come up again. Look, even before another game gets played, we're going to hear about the interceptions. He'll get asked the same questions at minicamp, at the other OTAs. He'll get asked at training camp. I'm fascinated to see the evolution and see if he's as irritated, it seems.
I think he's irritated now.
No, that's what I mean. I'll be fascinated to see if that irritation continues each time he answers it, or if yesterday was just maybe it was a rough day where it's like, I don't have the patience for today. Or if it's something where we're going to consistently see he doesn't want to take the questions like that.
He's specifically talking about clear out routes and stuff like that. Okay, who are the guys running clear out routes for some of the stuff? Was there some tight end faults? Was Dalton Schultz, some of the vertical routes where there's stuff that, where you're supposed to carry your guy? Was Gallup supposed to carry his guy a different direction? Was Noah Brown supposed to run a different way? I just, like I said, he is not, he was telling us that, listen, you want to blame me for this, but man, there are things that we sat down and watched. And I just don't think he wanted Mike McCarthy to even address that. I don't.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing. I think Dak probably feels like we have, for instance, let's just roll off of what you're, in theory, we're not saying this, but let's say, Schultz, Gallup, or some of the guys you mentioned. Gallup.
He said clear out routes.
Yeah. So let's say Gallup is one of these people that he's talking about. Gallup is in this locker room. Gallup clearly had confidence issues last year. If that were the case, that was one of the problems they had with interceptions last year, I bet Dak Prescott looks at it and goes, it is not profitable for me to tell you that Michael Gallup was screwing it up.
Yeah.
That doesn't help Michael. That doesn't help me. That doesn't help this football team. And so I'm not going to do it. we'll talk about communication and we'll leave it at that. And I think that's the frustrating thing for him is having to, I've given you the answer. I said communication. You guys, I'm trying to walk a fine line here and not mess up chemistry and confidence and some of these things. And I think that was probably his frustration, is he felt like shining a light on it, like McCarthy may have, that may have been a frustrating thing for him.
It absolutely did. And I don't blame Dak. McCarthy should have just not even talked about it. McCarthy should have just said, just answer any other questions, but don't address that one. Don't say, oh, we sat down and watched every interception. Of course, these writers, somebody's going to ask, well, what did you see? And then Dak gets back to Dak, and he's like, wait a minute, why? Every meeting that I have with you now is with you being the primary play caller. It's subjected to potentially being in the media. I don't think that's a good way to handle things.
You are listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, it is now time for our Dean Julia Love of the Star mailbag. And I got to lead off with this first question here. This guy's name is David Hellman. And he says, if we can assume for the sake of conversation that the Dallas Stars don't have a historic comeback in them, which Dallas Big Four franchise will win the city's next title? Kind of a terrible question from that guy. I don't know who he is. Kind of a low IQ question, but do you have an answer for David Hellman?
Hellman, did he happen to go to school at my alma mater there, the Ellis and the U's? Yeah.
He's not. I've seen a picture where he holds up an L, but I think that's acknowledging he's a loser.
Yeah. I love that guy. Gosh, no,
I did too. I love Hellman.
I had breakfast with him the other day, and I miss him every single day.
Oh, thanks for the invite, Brian.
Well, you were probably doing one of your. I think you were on air actually. We had breakfast. At 9:00. We had breakfast at 9:00 last week.
Oh, there you go.
But anyway, I think the team that might be going the right direction right now, and it's just not because of the way the record is. The next championship could be your Texas Rangers. Is who it could be.
They're good right now.
I think the Stars personnel. The Stars are, the Stars heck of a playoff run. Let's see if they can in fact claw their way back into this thing. I don't know why we're sitting here answering these questions here on this podcast, but I'll say it anyway.
It's just because Hellman asked the question. And I just wanted to take a chance to troll Hellman.
And here I am trying to answer the question. And I'm
still answer it, but I'm just trying to troll Hellman.
I think that I love the general manager with the Texas Rangers. I love the fact that the organization is willing to spend the money to get the players. I think the development, the Rangers are playing well. They got the fourth overall pick coming up in the draft. This is the last time I think they're going to pick fourth or in the top 5 in a long time. So I would say that the Rangers are probably the team that's got the best chance to bring the next championship. But man, it's not to say that the Cowboys do a hell of a job with their player personnel stuff. They really, really do. But if they could kind of put things together, I felt like they got over the hump a little bit with that win in the wild card, but then, San Francisco, that game, I just think it's going to take a little bit more time.
All right, so there's the answer to your terrible question, Dave.
Yeah, how about that?
Next question from TK. Why didn't the Cowboys try to sign a proven kicker like Brandon McManus, who signed with Jacksonville, and instead rolling with unproven Tristan Vizcaino? Brian, I know we were watching Vizcaino kick yesterday. It didn't feel like there was a lot of boom coming off of that leg.
There was not a lot, when sometimes you watch these kickers and you feel like that you really hear that ball hit that foot. Mm-hmm. This is one of those things where I kind of feel like that every one of his kicks, it felt like it got up and it was questionable if it was driving through the upright, that it was more of a hitting maybe a yard or two beyond the goalpost. I never felt like it was, sometimes these guys hit the ball and it's at the middle of the, it's in the middle and then it's high on the upright and it's sailing through and it's driving through. I just got the impression that these were like kicking a ball in the wind of 25 miles an hour and it was hanging up. man, just not a lot of power. The ones that he missed the last one. He made from 40 yards, he made a 40, a 43, a 45, a 47, and missed the 51. But he missed the first one. I don't think people counted. I saw him miss it. He hit the right upright. Maybe that was a warm-up kick, but he hit the right upright from 32, and it was no good. Then the second one from 35 he hit. He missed another one from 35. He made a 39, that 40, the 43, the 45, the 47, and then missed the 51. But man, the ball just did not have a lot of pop to it, and it didn't have like that driving ability through the uprights.
Next question here from CD. He says, most noticeable change in physical stature, who took the offseason seriously? I don't know that I saw anybody yesterday that it's like, whoa, they slimmed down or, oh, they bulked up.
Did you see Gallimore? I missed him. Did you see Neville Gallimore?
I saw Gallimore. I didn't notice necessarily how he looked. Nothing stood out to me. The one thing that stood out to me physically, and it's more just because I think he was hurt all last season, is Jaron Kearse could actually move at practice yesterday. He couldn't move the last month of the season. He was so hurt the last 6 weeks of the year. And so the thing that stood out to me was, I'm seeing Jaron Kearse move fluidly again. That's nice to see. I think the only thing I heard you comment on about stature out there was, boy, Deuce Vaughn, that is a small running back.
Well, he's short. I'll tell you a guy that I was impressed with physically that, again, seeing live for the first time was Schoonmaker. That is a big, square, good-looking player right there. When you start to talk about the tight ends, somebody said that maybe that they looked like that Hendershot had lost. Hendershot might have lost some weight. That he looked like that he had slimmed down. That he wasn't as bulky as he was last year, that maybe that he was a little bit slimmer. But I noticed Mozzie Smith's a good looking guy too on the end I was on. That's not a sloppy guy at all. That was a good looking player. Him, Awesome Richards, guys like that, really good looking physically how they play. I was talking to somebody in the organization about Awesome Richards. I said, hey, I go, you might have stole one there. And they go, we just need to get him a little bit stronger. But, the footwork, the athletic ability and all that, we feel like we got a player with some really nice upside there.
Question here from the Pearl. I hear Brian speak about the O-line coach, but with the running back coach leaving as well, could it be that the run game install both got axed, seemed off to me all season? So I guess the question there is it less about, hey, we need a new line coach or a new running back coach? It was these two working in tandem, the running game install wasn't working, and we needed to reset that as a coupling.
Man, I don't think that Mike McCarthy wanted to fire Joe Philbin. Joe Philbin ran out of a contract, and maybe Joe Philbin's asking price was more than what the front office was willing to pay. Yeah, that's surprising. But Jerry Jones, I think they've eliminated 3 coaches there, Bobby. We're down they're in that 20-something range, and I don't
27.
And I think that they at 27 now. Was it 30?
No, they were at 27. They were at
27, and they got, not that Rob Davis was a coach, but they just, the guys that they let go, the only guy they brought from the outside was the offensive line coach, was Mike Solari, right? They replaced Doug Nussmeier with Scott Tolzien. They moved the assistant line coach over to running back coach. So they didn't add any coaches other than the offensive line coach. I think this was one of those things where Jerry Jones, during the season, he's like, we've got all these coaches, and he was going, why? So I don't think Mike McCarthy wanted, like I said, I'll say it again, I don't think he wanted to get rid of Joe Philbin. But, man, there was a lot of prisoner for prisoner trading off on this coaching staff. When you think about the running back coach, with George Edwards getting released, I think George Edwards, in talking to him, he was surprised that he got let go, but what happened? Scott McCurley, who was the linebacker coach during the Mike Nolan administration, got his old job back. So these guys that were assistants who started off as regular coaches, when McCarthy first got here, then they became assistant to the assistants. now some of them got their old jobs back or had to move around. So I think this was a tough offseason for Mike McCarthy. And I think it was a tough offseason for Jerry Jones when it came to this coaching staff.
All right, and last question here. We got it asked by about 8 different people in various different ways. The big news today, of course, the Cardinals released DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
Brian, your thoughts on Hopkins as a player, or maybe some of what you've heard about where he is as a player at this point in his career, and do you think the Cowboys would have any interest?
DeAndre Hopkins, yeah. I asked a couple of the Gang of 7 where they might end up. They guys were like, man, Green Bay, Baltimore. Baltimore has signed, with Odell Beckham. I did ask somebody. I really, really trust that would know the situation. Maybe not within the Cowboys. And I'm saying, what about the Cowboys? I don't think that's going to happen. But some people who really are in the know with the Cowboys told me this. They were saying about Hopkins. I said, where does he end up? You got to guess for me. The guy said, depends on what he's asking for and who's willing to pay it. Odell Beckham set the marker for wide receivers and didn't play last year. Hopkins probably wants to be paid regardless, and I don't foresee much wiggle from whatever he perceives his value to be. So I don't see that I take that as the Cowboys are not going to be involved in this at all. They're not going to be in the DeAndre Hopkins, even though he was willing to reduce. Me personally, I would have made the trade for Hopkins, but they end up getting Cooks. They wanted Cooks. They got Cooks. I'm not going to fault them for that. They went out and they made a move, but I think I was more willing myself when that whole DeAndre Hopkins thing started out, that I was more willing to be that guy that would make that trade for him, but it didn't work out so well.
That does it for us here today on the Love of the Star. Thanks so much for joining us. We got more OTA practices, more mini camp practices to come. And we'll have another episode for you next week discussing all of it. For Brian Broaddus, I'm Bobby Belt. We will talk to you guys next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.